something slightly unusual, but I just want to get Tina back up here for a second, and I'm going to ask the business secretary just for 1 minute to come and join us, please, Vince. Warm round of applause. So I just wanted to very briefly, not totally put Vince on the spot, but it is a bit of an unfair thing to do. But because Vince is very big on sustainability and has done a lot in this government on this agenda, I just very quickly want to ask you for an observation of today, and if you can sort of maybe tie that into the broader context as you see things.
Yes, you mentioned the Brundtland report a few minutes ago. I think probably more important than what I do in the government, I actually helped to write that and helped to coin that phrase. So I believe in it, and it's motivated a generation to understand why environment is important and not just rapid growth. I first encountered the issues you're talking about here. I was a student. I'd hardly ever been abroad. And a group of friends, we decided to buy a van and we drove across. It was completely insane, but we drove across from here to India via the Soviet Union, via Afghanistan. Anyway, somehow we got there. And when we crossed the border into India, we entered a state called Punjab, which now is regarded as a very highly successful part of India. It's the breadbasket of India. But the year that I arrived, 1965, was the last great famine in northwest India. And as a highly impressionable young student, I saw starving people by the roadside, people giving away their babies, these horrible things that you see in famine. And so from a very early age, an impressionable age, I began to understand why the issues you're concerned about here matter. It also taught me that these things can be turned around, because what happened there was new technology, new rice, new wheat seeds, combined with good use of water, better scientific farming, a lot of hope, and endeavor actually turned that whole thing around. And I believe that internationally we can do the same. And so I think the effort you're making here to mobilize people to understand why water matters, why food production matters, to a combination of practicality and idealism. This is really what I think you're about. I think we've seen it work, I've seen it work, and I wish you well in everything you're doing.
Thank you very much, Vincent. And before you go, one just last thing, because of course it's very important to get business involved. And both our ex-big corporates, so Vince was at Shell, I was at BP, and neither of those two companies, in my view, are doing a great job on this agenda right now. But meanwhile, some other big businesses like Unilever, General Electric, Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, the Co-op, we've got Brian here, etc., are doing a fabulous job. And I guess the question is, what can we do together to really get more businesses to be putting back into society and the environment rather than taking away from society and the environment?
Well, I'm more positive than you. I don't actually think that big companies are necessarily the enemy of sustainable development. Actually, as you said, I worked for Shell. They did some bad things. Big companies do bad things. But actually, when I first joined them, which was the late 80s, they were the first company, ahead of the Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, that actually understood that global warming was real and it was happening. And they started adapting to it. They moved from coal into gas. Now, of course, they're commercial. It was in their own interests. But these companies have the capacity to understand the way the world's changing and have the capacity to develop the technologies to make it better. And I don't regard them as the enemy. I'm not uncritical, but they have the potential to change, and I regard them as partners.
Very good. Very last one. Very nice. The very last one is, of course, many people are wondering, to what extent the British government is really leading on climate change and sustainability, now that we've seen the Obama administration and the Chinese really upping the ante, and given that we were one of the leading countries originally on this topic. So the question is, how can the British government work more closely with leading businesses to make sure that we play a strong leading role on this agenda?
Well, I think we are leading, in fact. So there's a lot of resistance. If you read some of our popular papers, there are people writing articles every day saying that climate change doesn't exist. You've got other people saying, well, it may exist and we're willing to do something, but we're not willing to pay for higher energy prices. So there's a lot of denial and a lot of resistance, but we are trying to turn this around and give leadership. I'll just take an example from my own department. We're promoting what we call an industrial strategy, trying to think long-term, working with British business to get the British economy on a sustainable basis. And one of the things we're doing is trying to build up the British renewable energy sector. Offshore wind, for example, I helped to set up, and it's now running, a green investment bank. It was the first in the world, and it finances offshore wind, it finances waste disposal, industrial energy efficiency. We just financed the fitting of new light bulbs in Glasgow throughout the whole of the city under this scheme. We're trying to build up in the UK a supply chain, the people who manufacture the turbines, and the stands and the electronic transmission systems that underlie those windmills in the North Sea. So we are thinking long term. We do believe if you work in partnership with business, you can get these things right. We do believe there's a price to be paid. These things don't happen free. There's a cost, but it is a cost worth paying. And we believe that within Europe and globally, we are exercising leadership in recognizing this challenge and dealing with it.
Thank you very much. Let's give Vince a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully, the British government may help fund the Water and Food Awards going.